So moving up here to these values once again, let's just take some final looks at things. First of all, we do have confidence intervals here. They're repeated. I'm not sure why these are even here. I'm going to delete them. These are confidence intervals on this coefficient. So let's take caffeine, for example. Based on the data I have, my best guess is that drinking caffeine in the afternoon or evening will, on average, be associated with 20 minutes less of deep sleep per night. But that could range anywhere from 50 minutes less up to potentially giving me 10 minutes more of deep sleep. Because I don't have very much data, there's a pretty wide range there, but you can kind of think of this as almost the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. Similar for this screen time. It could be that on average reading actually decreases my average sleep time, or I should be careful here with my causal words. It's associated with 5 minutes less. It could be, for example, on the nights that I read, I just happen to be less stressed anyway, and the stress itself is there could be things. In particular with this one, this is one I've now started to collect experimental data on, where I flip a heads or tails, and that's what this heads is referring to. And that way I can control for all the lurking variables at once, roughly speaking, instead of needing to put them in a model and wondering if I'm missing out on different lurking variables. The nice thing about something like this is that I can randomly assign myself to read some nights or watch videos other nights. But the point here with the confidence interval is that choice to read instead of video might be associated with a 5-minute drop in average sleep time, all the way up to potentially a 30-minute gain. If I'm looking to put an extra hour of deep sleep per night, it's probably not realistic to think that that's going to come from reading. The reality is somewhere in this range, and this is my best guess. It's most likely that it'll be somewhere around 13 minutes extra of deep sleep per night. And I guess I should clarify here. I have been doing random, this data was based on random coin flips, so I can actually say that this is probably a causal relationship, that reading instead of the video screen time is probably causing me to get more deep sleep, on average probably about 13 minutes of extra deep sleep per night by choosing to read instead of watch videos. I think that's the basic idea. Again, the t-stat is the same type of t-stat that you're seeing when you do your t-test. That really just helps us get to the p-value. The standard error gives me basically the how accurate these are my best guess predictions. They're called point estimates. This is really what helps me then calculate this confidence interval. Really roughly speaking, we're going 2 standard errors below this best guess and 2 standard errors above this best guess to get these the borders of our confidence interval. And that number 2 is very imprecise. It really depends on something called degrees of freedom and something else, but that's a good rule of thumb. I'm not sure you really even need to worry about this too much. I would understand, in the overall model, I would understand the statistical significance. Here's the relationship between the predictor and the outcome. Here's your effect size, which also is part of practical or clinical significance. And then these are your best guesses at kind of roughly how much each of these is associated with the outcome. This is giving you statistical significance, a sense of whether or not each one is somehow related to your outcome variable. And this gives you a sense of, a more accurate sense of how much the two really are connected. Each particular predictor variable with the outcome variable. Let me go back to the slideshow. So you remember the whole point of running regression like this. I was finding something I cared about. I had the sleep issues. Based on those coefficients, really, I made some lifestyle changes. So I did stop eating juicy fruits in the evening. Started going for reading a little more. This is by no means perfect. On good nights, I read earlier to bed. Again, I just told you that I went to bed last night at 12:30. So these are not consistent things. I think I violated all three of these. But in general, I do these three a lot more. And I always do this, even last night. So when I do screen time, I do put a filter to block the blue light. And results are, I'm still struggling with sleep, but I am better than where I was at a year ago. I do feel that I have more energy in general.